cards?
And the lights are set on a dimmer, so we'll experiment with that. Ron, you may want to play with the lights, see if dimming works.
Tell me what you want.
This microphone is great. We don't have to mess with that speaker anymore because it's piped into the speakers in the ceiling. So this is nice. I had trouble getting in. My GPS sent me to the wrong entrance. And it sounded like that happened to a few. But I'll keep the orange MWG signs out there for future meetings until we all figure out how to get into this place. The restroom is directly outside that door. Men and women. Just walk through that door and you run right into it. So that's convenient. A couple of our normal announcements. If you'd like to buy a name tag, you see Ed Stuckey in the back for $5. You just write your name down, give him $5, and you too will have one of these beautiful name tags. I don't think I have to say check out the food table anymore because it's probably almost empty now. Also the raffle tickets. Ed's collecting the money back there, $1 a ticket. If you have your name tag on, you get 2 tickets for that $1.
The shirts.
The shirt counts if your name's on it.
No, but I mean, you can buy the shirts as well.
And Ron Ross will be talking momentarily about his MWG apparel. Some of us are wearing something, and you see some beautiful green shirts. Ron's modeling a nice blue shirt, and he's modeling a hoodie that he really has been promoting. And, so you can see Ron and sign up for Guild swag. Oh, and the raffle tickets. So got 4 items back there. For those of you that don't know, when we do the raffle, we'll pull a number out. If that's your number, you come up and pick whichever one of the prizes you want. Then the next number can pick from what's left, etc. This meeting, if all goes, yeah, Jim?
Is there a cost associated with renting this?
Yes. And Ron, I was going to ask you that. I've had a number of folks ask, what do we pay for this room?
It's the same as we paid for the other building.
Okay.
The difference is, in the other building, they would give us the whole area, even though there was a wall in that other building. The fact that we're here on Sundays, there's not many groups that come. So what they changed is what we pay is only half this building, half this room. But since no one's here, we're allowed to use the other half. This side of the building is room is certainly big enough for all of us.
And
so it shouldn't be a
what
problem.
do we pay? 200, 75, 100?
$25 an hour.
$25 an hour, and we rent it for 4 hours, 4-ish hours. So that was the $100. I think I teach someone $100. And that's what the other one cost. So really, this is a bargain.
Well, you could get a better roll at the bakery shop.
What's that?
You could get a better roll at the bakery shop.
I haven't heard that one. Okay. I see a lot of new faces here today, but I don't always remember the faces that well. Are there any new members that this is their first meeting? Just raise your hand. Wow. Let's just try this since this microphone is working nicely. Go ahead.
Stand up and do it at the same time.
Sure.
I'm Brian Kaser. I moved into the area from Lansing, where I was a member and a board member of the Mid-Michigan.
Jerry? We've got Helen here.
And Jerry recruited me when he came to Johnson's back in September. People wanted me, but I came anyway.
Thanks.
Should I drop the mic?
Thanks, Brian. I saw another Brian.
Yeah, I'm Brian as well, actually, and born in Livonia, so I didn't make it too far. I live in the area, and it's kind of a weekend hobby.
And your last name?
Walsh.
Okay, so new member. So
What do you like to make?
A little bit of everything.
a little bit of everything, right?
Get the lady back there, she's new.
Oh, was there another hand?
Well, I'm not a member yet, and I am going to ask you what, if I do become a member, what that affords me.
Get to come here. You're going to get a chance in a moment, because that's the members. And then, next question is, are there any guests here for the first time, just coming to see what's going on? Ooh. There are guests. Who are you with?
By myself, essentially, but it's Gary Roshlow. I'm from the area. Wanted to come by and see how the group operates, and I will be joining us.
All right, all right.
What do you like to make?
I do a little of everything, but I would like to make more furniture, and I'd like to, assuming my skills are there, ideally, I'd like to pick a fine piece of furniture and make it, maybe spend a year on it. I don't know how long it takes. I'm not there yet.
We have a number of our members who are also members of the Period Furniture Makers Group. And, you know, their skills is far beyond what I could even dream I could ever do. So welcome, welcome, welcome. You'll find a lot of resources. Welcome, welcome.
Okay, and we have another guest back here, Jean. I just handed her our little MWG business card, which has our website on there. That's the place to go to learn all about what goes on here. But to be part of this and the newsletter, everything that we do at the meetings, the camaraderie here, learning what goes on. So there's a lot of advantages, but check us out at the website. That'll be.
Women woodworkers are very rare.
And you brought in some
Women
cookies.
woodworkers are very rare.
I like working with my hands. I've always liked that. I've been landscaping for 20 years, doing installation and maintenance.
If someone wants to.
And I've got a little bit of a workshop started.
Here.
I want to be able to learn from all of you.
Welcome aboard.
A lot more experience than I am.
Again, what is it that you like to make?
I basically, the house, I'm from Northern Virginia. I just moved up here a few months ago. And my house was 50-some years old. So I did a lot of restoration, like putting up trim and, you know, putting in floors, tiling. So I'd like to get a little more into the slant of woodworking and making things. The gentleman that mentioned furniture, I would love to be able to do that. I don't know if my abilities would get me there, but something to aspire to.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
If you were from West Virginia, the first thing you had to do was put a floor in your house, right?
I'm not gonna say anything because that was my neighbor.
Making fun of West Virginia.
It's a very pretty state, West Virginia, as well as Northern Virginia.
First time?
First time.
First time. I see a couple new faces.
Another one here. My name's Russ, and this is my first meeting. I'm interested in all different kinds of woodworking. Mostly I make sawdust.
Don't we all?
Yeah, I picked up some turning, and recently my friend Gary and I, we've been finding logs, and we've been getting them sawn, and we're planing them down and making them into good products.
Oh,
We just-
you're the real deal.
We just scored some really beautiful walnut. It's amazing.
I have some.
Jim Kujay has a farm on the west side of Michigan. He's been doing that for 60 years. Or
Since the 70s.
doing exactly that, so you could share there. And came together.
Okay. Yep, so my name is Gary Cook. I'm from Commerce Township, and I came with Russ, and like he said, we like to get together now and then and do some turning or pick up the logs and get them to the sawmill, and that's like making a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Welcome,
This is fantastic. Welcome.
Welcome.
Saw a new face here.
I'm not actually new, but I haven't been since you were in Rochester.
Wow,
Yeah, it's been a while.
been a while.
Yeah.
I don't even remember being in Rochester, so that's a real long while. Great. Welcome to all the new members and all the guests. We're delighted. And I want to move this along because obviously the epoxy has drawn a lot of interest today, so we want to get moving. Ron is our apparel man. He's modeling.
Hair looks good. So for the guild, we have different kinds of shirts. We have denim, we have poplin, which is what this is. Thank you. Long sleeve, we have short sleeve, can't remember the material. Polo. Similar to this. And we have polo shirts, we have caps. Here's a cap right here. Must stand up and.
Yeah, you could be a model.
So you get a cap. And I just acquired these new hoodies. You can have your name on it or not, and then the logo. So the shirts are like $30, an extra $5 to put your name on. But if you have your name on your shirt or your coat or your jacket, you can still get double tickets. In case you forgot, like I used to do my name tag. The caps are $16, these are $35. So if you have a desire, come see me anytime and we'll get you set up. Thank you.
Ron and Dan Holowicki co-chair the toy program. Dan would like to say a few words about that.
Well, I'm glad to see we got about 60 plus members over here today and new people, which is great because we normally only have 40, 45 or so. So I'm hoping this is a sign of the times. We're going to see more people showing up for the meetings in the future. And I want to talk a little bit about the toy program. The toy program that we do for Children's Hospital in Detroit is probably the longest running program that the Guild has. It's been going on for 25 plus years. We set a goal of supplying 400 toys and numerous boxes, both memory boxes and plain boxes, to give to the hospital every year. The past 5-6 years or so, the amount of toys that we have been putting together as a group and donating has been 450 to maybe 520, something like that, and boxes anywhere from, I would say 20 to 40. This past year, it was kind of low. We were 396 toys and 13 boxes. Also, our member participation in the program was severely down last year. I'm hoping it's just a one-year anomaly, and things will improve this year. But Ron and I are going to start coming up with some ideas so that we can have some incentives for people to participate in the program. And if you do have any questions about the program, please feel free to see Ron or me. There's a whole section in our website about the toy program. We have a lot of very simple toys that you can make. The instructions or diagrams for them are right in the website. You can just download them and print them off. And you're not, you don't just have to make, what we show that's available. You could design your own toys. But the big thing is, remember, they have to be built according to the guidelines, which means no metal screws or washers or anything like that. You're using, Elmer's glue or carpenter's glue. We have a list of finishes that are approved, and that's due to government regulations about the use of lead and a whole bunch of other crap that I don't want to go into. But it's a fairly extensive list. And like I say, if you have any questions about the program, feel free to contact
The
me
free
around.
wheels and axles.
Yes.
I have a question. One of the members asked me about mineral oil. Is that something we can use?
I would not. I would not use mineral oil for a finish.
It's safe, but if.
It's safe,
it wouldn't-
but, I mean, people use it for cutting boards and stuff like that. The problem with mineral oil is that after it's washed a few times, it wears off. For sanitary reasons, the hospital wants a finish on there that'll last, so that they can continually wash the toys and make them sanitary. So I would not use mineral spirits. Also, the Guild does supply wheels and axles and washers for any cars or moving toys that you want to make. We have several different sizes available. That's also listed in our website. So anybody that has any interest in that,
And are they on the
we're welcome.
table right now?
We do have some items on the table back there. They're kind of all different things. We've got a bunch of oddball shapes and sizes that have been donated to the Guild over the years. You know, they're available free for the taking if you're going to participate in the toy program. Any questions? Okay, good.
Tool raffle. Ed back there. Ed's gonna bring up some stuff and the tickets,
Got some Rockler cookies,
which I use all the time.
good. And I got some woodworking tape, double-sided tape.
Double-sided tape. which I
And
use.
some kind of jig I bought on Amazon. I think it's for gauging heights, like table saw blades and router bits and things like that, okay? Yeah. It's a knockoff of woodpecker stuff, okay, which is a lot cheaper.
And the cyclone separator. You set this on a 5-gallon bucket if you get the proper adapter. And
Dust collector.
for your dust collector, which Dave donated it to me. I'm donating it to the raffle, so thank you. Okay.
Okay, one thing, based on, I collected over $100 in prize money, and so I will upgrade the prizes if you all show up next month.
All right.
2279.
All right.
I will take the tape.
Yeah. Smart
Next
move.
number.
Smart.
Okay.
And everybody, you know,
All right. Thank you.
Take some more of these. Never have enough cookies.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I got the buckets.
Two more quick announcements. Our next meeting, February 8th. Our meeting presenter is going to be Jeff Street. Jeff, you want to just stand? He's going to talk about box making. He's done some real fancy box making. So he's going to make that presentation next week. Next month, February 8th, right here. Lastly, for those of you who have not renewed your membership, see Dave McKay after the meeting. Obviously, lots of folks did that today. That's great. I will be sending notices out. There's Dave, by the way, with the camera. I'll be sending notices out pretty regularly because we had a lot of folks that were not renewing. But looks like they're coming in today, huh, Dave?
We've gotten a few.
Gotten a few.
No,
Okay.
no issues about that whatsoever. Yet, we could always use more. And if people want to pay their dues Chicago style, early and often, that's fine.
Okay.
How much, Dave? Tell them how much.
Oh, $25 for a full year's membership.
All right. Mites. Okay, that wasn't on the schedule. I will be sending out a notice to all the members. Mites is asking again for judges for their woodworking competition at their state convention, which is early in May. I forgot the exact date. They're asking for judges. Normally, the competition is way up north, so it's 2-3 hours or more for us to get there.
What's Mites again?
May 7th.
May 7th, Michigan Industrial Technology Education Society. It's a group of collection of high schools that send, their high school students send projects for the competition. The projects are unbelievable for middle school and high school kids. They're asking for judges, but this year it's in Waterford. So it's very close. I would like to see, that they need like 50 or 70 judges typically. I would like to see us send 20-ish judges there. So I will be sending out an email with all the information and a link how you can click on it and just register right online to them.
You're
Jim?
not asking for local judges anymore? Years ago, we actually judged the local schools around here.
Right.
The people that won those went to the state final.
Right.
Yeah,
Someone was contacting them.
The regionals, yes, Jim, we used to judge at both the state as well as the regionals. Bill Gady would coordinate the regionals. I will have to say that I'm gonna do what I can to find out who to contact about regional judging. Because I do know there's some down in Monroe, there's Dearborn Heights, and, yeah, and around the places, yeah, and Farmington, yeah. The one to go to was Dakota High School, and Bill Gady kept this secret for years because what they would do is they would bring out their culinary people and serve a wonderful dinner to the judges before the judging. Bill Gady kept that to himself, so yeah. I think they still do it, I don't know.
Well, Farmington did that also, but I wouldn't say it was anything more than, snack stuff.
You're right. I understand. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna do my best to find out who the contacts are. Who would be interested in helping to judge woodworking projects at some of the local high schools around the area?
Oh, okay.
Fantastic.
That's
Fantastic.
the preliminary. The winners from there go to the state competition. And a number of us have done it a number of years at the state competitions. And it's mind-boggling, and it's fun, and it's easy. It's not really hard. But I'll be sending out a lot of information to you guys, so you'll be able to look into it, think about it, and sign up.
It's very interesting because it's not just wood stuff that's being judged.
Oh.
It's metalworking stuff, it's art stuff, architectural, welding stuff,
There's
sculpture
probably
and so forth.
20 or 30
There's
categories.
different categories,
like
boat
that.
building, archery bows making, so forth. It's amazing what
Woodworking
these young
is,
people do.
yes, woodworking is the biggest, and they need the most judges for that. But you're right, tons of, so it's fun just to walk through it. And now that it's free to just go and watch. Now that it's so local, that'll be a good opportunity.
Isn't this a fabulous place? So I came in the main entrance, it said, just follow the markings and hallways, and must have been walking for a mile. I'm glad you all made it here, and we're starting off a great year. We got some excellent presentations coming on in the year. So we're starting off this time with epoxy. And can we get the first slide up? I have three colleagues that are going to go into the different aspects of it. And, that's not the first slide, but that's okay. There we go. And these are epoxy pieces which are sitting up here and have been done by the speakers that you'll have today, so you know they're real, you know this is what they like to do, or a partialist. So anyway, we'd like to get into that, and I'll tell you who's going to be presenting, just so you know the outline. Next slide, please. Yes. And we're going to have about 4 parts in here. We're going to go with the general introduction by myself. Then Bob and Ellen are going to talk about all things epoxy as it relates to all the art that you see around here, and how do you build a frame to, how do you finish it up when it gets cracks on there or scratches or anything else, and they've done some beautiful stuff, and you can just see what's here as a sample of it. And then Steve Strom is going to go into inlays, and he called me on Friday and said, hey, I finally got my presentation to go along with your PowerPoint. It's only 31 megabytes. Can you handle that? I said, I can't accept a file that big on my computer. But anyway, he's converted that down, and he's got a wonderful little couple display pieces here. He's going to go into that, and here's another type of inlays that we do, and we can talk about that kind as well. And then another person from the LPC is Brian Learstein. He couldn't make it. The gentleman's been really sick, but he was kind enough to give me his pressure pots and chambers and other equipment, and I know what he would like to discuss, and I'll try to express that to you people and give you some of the pros and cons. I hope you'll enjoy that. It's going to be the basic program. So I'll talk only about 10 minutes on this. That'll be maybe a half an hour for Bob and Ellen, and then I'll go into the various pots and how they're used. And that'll be about 10 more minutes, and then Steve will go on for about a half an hour, and we'll get you out of here early. We'd like to invite all the participants to ask your questions and provide insights as we go through the program. Makes it much more timely when we do that. We had so many people up here before the show got started. I said, my gosh, they're not going to have any questions left when the program goes, and all I have to do is stand up here and say, you've heard the presentation, any questions? But anyway, so let's make this interchange between us, all of us here, okay? So, can we go to the next one? Thank you. Okay. That one seems different than mine, that's good. Okay, so, as I say, but I'm going to talk about what is epoxy and what are the uses of it. And then we'll go into the design and making, and then pressure pots, and then inlays. And so, what is epoxy? We all use the term. And we're not going to go and have a chemical discussion on it, because certain folks here are real chemists, and I don't want to get in that debate. Okay, can we go into what is epoxy? Next slide. Okay. Generally, epoxy is a two-part system of resins and hardeners that combine chemically, and they generate heat in the process of it. And so people are concerned that when you're working with it, you don't want to be too close to reaction. Sometimes it can get a little warm in there, or fumes can come out. But it's basically that. Epoxy does adhere to most materials: wood, metal, ceramic, glass. And you have the epoxies that we use in the gallon and half-gallon units, but we all use them on a daily basis. When you look at the Gorilla Glues, the JB Weld glues, squeeze the syringes, and what do you know? They to it, you mix it up, and there you got epoxy. And epoxy was invented actually 1934. Germany gave out its first patent for epoxy. At about the same time, and independently, Switzerland did the same thing, and then Switzerland became the king of the world for doing epoxy and providing materials and adaptabilities. And then the U.S. came involved in like 1942. So it's been around for quite a time. And what kind of epoxies do we have? Well, you have very soft ones, and we'll go into that. Like when you screw up on a project, you get a soft one. And you're going to go from gummy bear type feeling, you can squeeze them and manipulate them, to the very hard ones, which are in your roller blades and hard hats. So it's a tremendous range in there. And we also use silicons in this process, because you're going to go into castings, we'll cover that. But you use the castings, you put the epoxy into the casting, you put it in a chamber and leave it at room temperature, and you'll end up with coasters or whatever else you put into your casting. Okay? So, people always ask us, are there any good books? These are 3 books that have been very popular. And Jess Crow, she does big time operations. She's out of Alaska. And she also has her own line, epoxies and silicons and such. And none of these books are complete. Like Jess, I enjoyed reading her book and going through it, but she never expressed how thick a layer of epoxy can you lay at a time. A 1/4 inch, 1 inch, 2 inch. She doesn't cover that. And she doesn't cover how to repair scratches. Yes, sir.
Is the presentation going to be on the website?
No,
The video will be, but the presentation?
no, not necessarily.
I don't know what they're planning to do on that. My commission only comes from what we do today. I thought it was all came out, but anyway, if you want that,
Well, Bert, would you be willing for it to be distributed?
absolutely.
Okay, we'll figure out a way.
Yeah, I have it on a power stick and you can send it out by Gmail, I should say email. So just a reference, and they're good books, and they got a lot of plans on them. Each book, each author has their own series of plans. So it gives you something to start about and get your creativity. Because as you see with epoxy, this isn't just building something. You're creating. It's what do you as the artist, what do you conceive as being something very interesting? And from there, now you have a medium epoxy that you're using as part of your base, as you can see here. Okay. When you go to buy epoxy, and if you go on to Amazon or the others, they range from $15 a gallon up to $100 a gallon, depending on the epoxy you get. So things you get to look at is the quality of the components. And that's very important as to like how many air bubbles you're going to get, how well do they cure, how fast or how long does it take for you to be able to work and then for it to finally get hard. And we'll use that in better definitions as we go into the front. And then the clarity of the finished products, UV and yellowing resistance. Epoxy has a tendency to turn yellow over time. And there's 2 different types of areas that you worry about when you hear about, oh, UV. Well, yes, one is getting UV from the, shall we say, the sun and the atmosphere. And those, that can be resisted by having inhibitors that go into the epoxy resin. But there's also an epoxy which, when you make it, you use a UV light to cause it to cure. So it's ready in a matter of minutes to use. So there's 2 different ways of looking at the UV. Is that the epoxy to have UV inhibitors, or is the epoxy supposed to be used with a UV light? So be sure you check those out. And then the ability to handle colors and dyes. And we can go into that, but I found that there are 3 basic categories of dyes. We'll give it up to you there. And they don't all work the same. I happen to like the powder dyes. They work better for me, than the liquid dyes. In fact, I opened up one that Brian had given me last night, and it spilled, so I just had it all over my hands and on the doors, everything I touched. And I spent a lot of time getting that cleaned off, so I know it adheres well. Okay, so.
You skipped bubbling.
Well, yes, bubbling is very important on there. Okay. But the bubbling comes about from a variety of things, just from when you stir the components together, how careful are you about on the bubbling, and we'll go into some of that in the casting, and how do you just pour it into a mold, or do you try to slide it in so it doesn't get as much bubble. And Ellen and Bob will talk about how thick you do the layers so the bubbles can come up to the surface, and then how we use torches or hot air guns and such to get those bubbles out. There's a variety of things. I've got some castings to show you a little later in my part of the presentation, which will show you the complete difference between some of this been done in a pressure pot with all the bubbles removed, so to speak. They don't get removed, they get shrunk down to a microscopic level. And those that have just been air cured and the bubbles remain, and they even have different color to it. Okay, so here's several of the types that people really like. Ellen has been using this recently, really likes that. Steve really likes the Entropy. I've worked with these two brands, been happy with that, and Alumilite. Many of you may know the company. They have all sorts of things from castings to frames and everything else. You want to buy a frame, you spend a couple $100 doing that, or you can take a piece of wood and coat it with silicone for a couple dollars. And then for the tints, as I said, well, these are the three most popular ones. Mixol, which is a paste. Roly, this is a powder, I have that here. And then Alumilite versions, which are liquid. I have a jar of that here also. So you should do your own research and decide, well, but the tints, they can all work, but the experience that we've had is that the Roly is very, very good. And here, that's what you want to do. Like I have a container here, which is, well, I've got two. This I found to work very well. That's the resinol. Then you have a casting. Well, you don't use a casting for just doing this kind of work. You use it when you can have it in a mold. So they have different purposes. All right. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. First consideration when you work with epoxy, as we should, whether doing woodworking or turning lathes or anything else, your PPE, your personal protection equipment on there. Standard type things, apron, footwear, gloves, glasses and goggles, respirator, adequate room ventilation. If you have too much hardener, because you have a resin and then you have a hardener, and if you have too much hardener in a mix, it can cause smoke, it can cause fire, it can cause a very bad odor. So you always want to make sure you're properly ventilated. They also like to have rooms that are about 70 degrees more certain.
The gloves, I've never heard of a nitrate.
That's your latex type glove.
Oh, latex?
Yeah. Any of those, shall we say, disposable
Yeah.
gloves.
Thanks.
Okay, now we have, resins have been brought into like 4 categories. I think I have 4. Your quick cure, these are for small areas like inlays and jewelry. The working time, which in the profession they call that pot time, depending on branding, go from 5 minutes to 40 minutes, and it cures in somewhere between 1 and 24 hours. Now, believe it or not, just JB Weld, this is an epoxy, hardens in 5 minutes and cures in an hour. This is Gorilla. It's an epoxy. Takes about an hour, and it takes 12 hours before you can basically handle it, about 24 hours to cure. So it ranges tremendously for what we think are very similar type units. Then we go to the general purpose in there, and that's what we use when we're dealing with this type of artwork in there. They cure generally, they have a working time called the pot life. They're around 30 to 40 minutes. And they cure in generally 12 to 24 hours. I didn't mean to say 1 to 24. Should actually be 12 to 24. Sorry about that. For the general.
I want to ask you.
Yes.
The 5-minute epoxies, are they just as strong as the longer cures? Because I make carving knives and we put them in a stick tanks, and they say the 5 minutes, stay away from it. You ain't got the strength. Go with a slower cure. Is that correct or not?
I don't agree with that assumption. For example, I have the JB weld here and I told you about for your flex tool, you can use it in there. The JB weld has a PSI rating of 3,950. That equals the same as your best Type Bond 3s and 4, and higher than what you're going to get when you have your CA glues, your instance. They're around 24 to 3,000. So based on our discussions, I would think you can do quite well with the JB, and it'll give you very good adhesion between your wood and the metal blade
I
that
was
you have.
surprised because the fellow that did the lecture from Franklin, he said the Type Bond has got more PSI, more stronger than super glue. I said, well, I didn't
Oh,
know that.
absolutely. And it's not as brittle.
1,500 PSI or something.
Well, the Type Bond 3 is 4,000. Okay, so that's exceeds this. It's 3,950. But anyway, they're very good on that.
Bert?
Okay? Yes.
Kind of related to that question, not initial strength, but I was under the impression that the quick curing epoxies had less water and or heat resistance. Is that correct?
I'll let my
'Cause
colleagues.
he's talking about kitchen projects, you know.
I'll let my colleagues address it. You guys have an opinion on that?
Well, I don't know. Nobody knows where the whole goes.
Yeah. So to give you the academic answer, it depends. You know? Yes,
Yeah,
Steve.
I think what it comes down to, there's different epoxies are actually formulated for different things, because the epoxy I'm going to show, this is Entropy, their claim to fame is they're used for the surfboard industry. And so if you ever look it up, what you can find on YouTube and everything else, and Google, is all the surfboard people, where they're wetting out fiberglass on top of a surfboard. So water resistant and impact resistant is good, but it's a laminating epoxy, okay? I use a lot of West Systems epoxies, but they're just adhesive epoxies. So I guess you gotta play around with what are you gonna use it for?
Well, yes, but on your laminating and such, why don't you discuss that if you have a moment?
What's that?
Okay. When you present your stuff on the Entropy, maybe you can discuss about the laminating process.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that, but
Yeah.
when there are different epoxies, and a lot of them have different, there's epoxies for doing veneering.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, okay.
Yes, you're right.
How about shelf life? And does that affect the shelf
They
life?
all, it's like food, they give you the recommended period of time, but people I know have had it for years sitting on the shelf. And as long as you keep it away from sunlight and moisture, it can last you years before you finish it.
That's unopened. I think I've opened, I've had epoxy open for 3 months and it started to get a little firm and whatnot. But if you just take it and put it in a pot of hot water, it will loosen it back up and give it a lot more viscosity. But an unopened jug, I imagine a year or so, maybe longer. I'm sure they'll tell you, but I've noticed that.
Right.
Once you open them, within a few months they start to harden up.
I know on the tubes when I buy it now.
Give me the slide, the next slide.
I put a date on it right away because I've gone back 3-4 years later using it for a project and haven't been all that successful at times.
All right. So these are the last two basic categories I think we're going to I'm going to share with you. But as you can see, depending on your use, depends which kind of epoxies you want to get. These are the deep pours. You see people do the tabletop. They do rivers and such that can be several inches thick. Some manufacturers say it can only be used up to 1 inch in thickness. The general is generally an 1/8 to 1/4 inch of thickness that we apply on it before we put another layer on. Other manufacturers say it can go up to 2 inches. Do not use it for less than 1 inch. So you have to read the labels. And the working time, about the same as the general, 20 minutes to 40 minutes. But it partially cures in 2 to 7 days. Where you saw the general is fully cured in that time period. General can go for 12 hours to 24. We generally, let it sit overnight. If you get 24 hours out of it, it's pretty doggone hard and durable at that time. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the depth of pour. So if I'm working with a slab, it's like 8/4, like 2.5 inches thick or something. It might be 2 inches through, like 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch hole and fill it. So the curing is not oxygen related, right? It's curing with its own chemistry.
It's a chemical reaction, yeah.
Yeah, chemical reactions. So I'm really not thinking about this being a 2-inch deep pour, or am I? You see what I'm saying? Like I've got essentially a tube that's going to be 1/4 inch in diameter, but it is 2.5 inches long. I don't have to worry about it actually being a 2-inch pour.
Well, I'll let the others speak on that, but my experience was that I have your philosophy that it's only 1/4 inch wide.
Yeah.
It's just like going from flat to vertical.
Yeah.
And I've not had any problems with that. But everybody else, other people have different experiences.
On the instructions, I think it's the same what you got. Michael's and Hobby Lobby sells their epoxy. On the Eagle canes that I make, I put a flag in the back. Okay, your first pour, don't fill it all the way. Just go very little, just over your emblem maybe. This way it doesn't saturate no more and your wood is sealed. The next day you do the second pour, and I don't have no bubbles or nothing. It does a beautiful job.
Well, he was having a 1/4 inch gap and about 2 inches deep. So it's like you're instead going on a horizontal surface, going up 1/4 inch in terms of vertically. Is there a big problem doing that?
In fact, I just was watching a video. In England, it's big now. They're digging out trenches, big holes, but I'm concerned about the gassing off and everything of this epoxy. I think it's just too much, and we don't know years down the road if there's going to be any health effects.
Interesting point. Yes,
I
Dan?
think it has to do with heat generated, because when epoxy cures, it gives off heat, which makes
Right.
it exothermic. So if you have a real thick layer, over 1 inch, 2 inches, it's going to create a lot of heat, which could lead to possibly yellowing or cracking.
I tell that.
Yeah, going up with what Dan said. Yes, yes, ma'am.
So when we're talking about this and the off-gas and the heat, what's your environment like when you're doing this? You have certain temperatures and certain, like, ventilation?
Yeah, there's a couple of things they would like. One, they would like you to be at a temperature range of around 70 to 80 degrees. That seems to work well. A clean room, so that you don't have sawdust or bugs or things in there coming in, creeping in, and you got to try to correct for that.
What's wrong with bugs?
So it's a clean environment.
It's character.
Airflow, very important that you have fresh air coming in. So when you have the exothermal, this heating Dan was talking about, you don't deplete the oxygen in there, you don't have bad odors and everything, so you have fresh air. That's another part, but those are 3 things. Yeah, Bob?
I saw one video where the guy was doing a 4-inch pour, and what they do to get a longer cure time, they will have an environment, and then they'll lower the temperature down to 62, and it seems to slow down the curing process to give it a harder cure. So if you have a area that you control the temperature in, that the ambient temperature will have a lot to do with it. How wet it is, how dry it is, the humidity.
I was going to ask you guys if you would come up here, you folks come up here and share this podium with me, but it's most apropos because I have only one more slide before I'm going to ask you to come up here. So anyway, there you got the casting ones and the castings, which is, we'll show you over here, and we'll go into the casting. In fact, when we go to the pressure pots, I'll show you the impact of castings on it. So now we're going to talk about creating epoxy art. And I'd like to have Ellen and Bob come on up here, talk about their experiences and the values of it. You had so many people around the table before. I hope they can get it done in the time that we've got allocated. And so Bob and Ellen are with I work with them at the OPC. We do this stuff as a hobby, among many other things, and we also teach classes over there. So they're going to talk today about...
Use the mic for the recording and for people hearing.
Okay.
I started out because I wanted to make a birdhouse. And the birdhouse class wasn't until 3 months later. So in the meantime, I made like 40 cutting boards and then, I said, and the birdhouses and planters and all those kind of things. And I fell into the epoxy just because it looked like it was fun. It looked, it looked different. And Bob was doing a lot, doing a fabulous job, and I thought I can copy him. So just watched him and some of the other guys and just started doing it. And like I said, I find it just to be a really nice thing and semi-creative, more or less. Make a lot of mistakes. I've only actually had to throw out one thing, but I did make my daughter a table, like a side table to her couch, and I made one for me, and I just, keep making new things. My son had some walnut that was cut in his yard, and so I made countertops for a friend of mine for her laundry room. And I just put pieces together. I think it was great fun. So.
Go at this, I guess we'll start. Any questions? What do you want to know? I build my own forms out of wood and silicone to release it and tape. Is that
Yes.
the packing tape? It's just basic packing, cardboard packing tape that I use as my release agent.
That's a silicone now.
Oh, this is the silicone? Well, yeah. This probably costs more than packing tape. I'm all about cheap and free. The Tyvek makes a nice tape also for the guys that like the better stuff, but I just use regular packing tape and it's fine. I've never used any release on my tape. The release is more for the silicone forms, I think. Next one I do, I am going to try to wipe it down with a little silicone and see how it pops out. It's a little bit, you gotta unscrew everything and knock it around and whatnot. I don't get the silicone forms, because in order to get a form this size, which is, I think this is 13 by 22, it'd be like $300-400, and I can't find them big. Usually they're just a foot by 18 inches, more cutting board size. So when I'm doing everything I do, I build my own forms. And they're quite easy. Take whatever you're going to make, whatever size you think you need, make the form, put the tape in, and then you start to build your project, whatever it is you're going to, it's going to be.
Do you put anything on the base?
On the bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all taped. The bottom's, everything on the inside of this form is taped.
But the base of the form?
Oh, yeah, just a little bit.
When you're building your form, you do
because
the base
this
as well.
is there they go. This is an adjustable. I use it for multiple sizes. So yes, it's all taped. You have to have the tape or spray on it.
You're losing your marbles.
This is a piece I was going to show you. A couple of pieces. This is the only one I have in process right now. These pieces all are not finished. There's something wrong with each and every one of them that I haven't gotten to yet, because I have a time limit on each project, and once it reaches that time limit, it kind of, all right, I'm moving on to the next thing. And I like just to build it, because everything needs a little bit of epoxy here and there, so I'll get 8 or 9 pieces that need epoxy, and I'll make a batch, pour the black, and then I'll make another little with the same, I'll leave it all white or clear, and for whatever I need, I'll take a little bit out, make a color, and pour it. it seems to be easier that way for me. Building it's quite easy, and it's quite fun. You know, find what you want. You can put anything together with epoxy. As you see, I'm putting brass, copper, aluminum, steel on the metal side, but my next one I'm going to add some wood to some metals and try different things like that. So basically, anything you like, you can put it together, throw some epoxy on it, and hang it on the wall.
Does any wood, porous mortar wood, absorb any of the epoxy where it needs to be coated or sealed
Yes,
first?
first time I didn't coat it, and when I left to leave it to go home and go over, come back the next day, I left it, there's no bubbles. When I came back, it was bubbles everywhere because I did not coat the wood. You're best off, whatever you're going to use, take a thin layer and just brush it on like paint or varnish or whatever, and that'll seal the wood, and you won't get the bubbles associated, because a lot of your woods, even though they don't look porous, they're pretty porous.
So you let that layer cure before you...
24 hours, let it cure, 24, 36, usually 24, but you can let it cure longer. They recommend you can pour another, once it starts to get tacky and stuff, you can pour another layer on top. There's all different opinions on it. I just can go by what I've done, what I've experienced. I usually wait till at least 24 hours where it's not tacky or sticky. Because I feel if it's still a little tacky, that chemical reaction's still going on and the off gases and all that. If you put another layer on top of that, you could just end up getting more bubbles. So I've never really, the soonest I've ever poured has always been at least 24 hours. A second coat.
2 questions. Can you wait too long? Do you get any adhesion problems? And number 2, do the slower setting epoxies allow the bubbles to escape better, or does that not matter?
I've had no problem with adhesion. They always recommend that you rough it up with 120 grit, and you pour on top of that. It's amazing. You rough it up, it's all full of scratches, and you look, it's like, oh, what the hell am I going to do with that? You pour that epoxy on it, instant crystal clear. So, and the second question was the drying times. It all depends. You have to, like, on one of the bird slides it showed 30 minutes. And I had always worked with epoxies that were 2 hours to cure. Well, I bought one cheap off the internet, didn't read the whole thing. So I put it together and I'm stirring it and I walk away, stir it some more. I come back to use it, I'm starting to work with it. And within 20 minutes, it's like, what's going on? It's hardening up, it's going bad quick. So you be careful what you read. There are epoxies like the stuff I'm using, it sat for 2.5 hours. I came back, I saw a mistake in it, and I pushed it over, did a little dab on it, and at that point it was really gelling up, and I could bring a cap to it, or a point. But I sat there and watched it, and it just slowly just leveled back out. So a lot of this particular Osbane, that's given me a cure. I can work, like I said, I worked with it 2 hours into it. That other stuff, some stuff is a half-hour cure, and it's done.
The question was, any difference in bubble trapping with
bubble
different cure
trapping.
times?
Well, yeah, the quicker the cure time, the less time you're going to have to get those bubbles out. I've never used the pot, but after my last pour, I'm going to start using the pressure pot to take the bubbles out of the epoxy before you pour it onto your project. I use a torch, a turbo torch. Some people use a hair dryer to take they'll take the bubbles right out. If you don't really, you're just supposed to gently stir. The more aggressive you are with the stirring, the more bubbles you're going to get in. I was going to ask one of the chemical engineers about, I've read there's different ways on stirring. Some say you take your 2, you pour them in one, you stir for 6 minutes, then you pour it into another cup, stir another 6 minutes, wait, and then pour. I've done all that, but my new thing is I'll stir it for like 1.5 minutes, until it looks splendid. I'll walk away, I'll go get a coffee. About 4 or 5 minutes later, I'll come back, stir it for a couple more minutes, walk away, and then come back and stir it one more time, and I've never had any problem. One guy at the shop, he's got some epoxy, and he says he's got to stir it for 10 minutes straight. And I've never had that problem. I think once you get a good mix, I think they tell you to stir for that long so you're sure of a good mix. I found by leaving it sit for a few minutes and coming back and stirring it, I've had no problems with any of my pours.
And I'm not patient at all. So the epoxy that I bought is 3-minute stir. So I stir it for 3 minutes, and really it looks good. I'm kind of casual with the stirring. And it's come out beautifully clear, very little bubbles, the new brand that I'm using, and just really happy with that. And in fact, this one thing over here, I had sanded like crazy, and just was totally, looked like that. And I poured epoxy on top just with a brush, and a chip brush, painted it on, and it cleared up completely. So I'm going to take this home, flip it over again, do a little more sanding, and just with a chip brush paint it, and it should come out much better. But it comes out very clear, and it dries, like I said, cures in 24 hours. And I'm really happy with that. Also, when I made my frames, I had done it before by putting the tape like Bob does. And what I would get is all these ridges from the tape. So not wanting that, I just painted a little bit of epoxy, on the bottom, so it was very smooth, a little up the sides and the corners, and then poured my epoxy, and amazingly, I didn't get any leaks. I've also done it where I've used a silicone all around the edge of the frame and up the sides, and it leaked out, so that's not very attractive. So, there's just so many ways, and like I said, I'm obviously not a perfectionist, nor am I very good at this because I am very new at it. But it is totally a really neat thing to do. And like I said, my big thing is I always end up using seashells on everything, so from South Florida, so. But anyway, like I said, there's just so many ways of doing it, and you just got to find what works best for you. And trial and error is really good, so. But anyway, turn it on.
As far as the form, now this form, usually the forms I make, I keep as part of the piece. If this piece wasn't going to be so I could see it from the side, so you'll be able to see dimension and detail, so I'm going to knock these out. I usually I'll make a frame out of oak or black walnut or whatever wood I'm using, and I'll just pour up to the top, and when I'm to the top, I'll make my final pour, and it's called a flood pour, and I'll pour it all over the whole frame, so the whole thing will be the piece, and then I don't have to worry about making a form for it. The form is the piece itself. Like I'll do this. Ellen made the piece and put this box on it. I'll make the box and then pour epoxy over the whole thing, so the whole thing will be epoxy. You can do that too. So it's more like this, like Ellen did, kind of like, so you have it coming down the sides and all.
So I just brushed it, went around the sides, so.
Mine is done in final form.
I'm sorry?
Walnut.
Oh, this was done in final form?
Final form.
Yeah.
Encapsulated, yeah, so it is encapsulated. But like I said, this, even though it's clear, it's really a crummy pour, so that's why I'm going to flip it over and do the epoxy again on the back side. It will become clear, and I'll be very careful with it. And then I'll just sand off the sides, and this will be a decent looking thing, and it will be very, very clear, like this is. So.
Back to the bubbles. I haven't had too much problems with the bubbles. If you don't stir it too vigorously and you pour it out, you let it spread, you look at it and you hit it a little bit with some heat. I've had real good success. I really haven't gone back and seen, other than a few early pieces, bubbles in them. But the pressure pot would take all the worry and guess about the bubbles out, because it'll just take all your bubbles out. And you might get a few residual bubbles here or there. I don't know. I'm just assuming you'll get a residual bubble or two, and just hit a little heat. I got a couple little picks, I'll pick at it, you know. It's all, like I said, mine is all trial and error. Alan's all trial and error, and most of yours will be trial, just like anything else, you know.
And what I do too is because I don't have one of the heat guns at home. So I do the alcohol. I have alcohol in a spray bottle. I stand way over it and just do the finest mist that I can. And that just, the bubbles just go away. It maybe doesn't have the most perfect top, but I like it.
I didn't think the mix was so critical on your clear cast epoxy. It says, don't mix your cups. Go your A, your hardener, and then B, and then pour in cup C.
Yeah.
So I
that's what we
think it
do.
was that critical. I thought I could clean it up pretty good.
Yeah, it's easy.
Was it that fussy?
The hardest part is if you don't get your measurement exact. You know, when you're one cup, you try to use the same cup to pour it, and it doesn't work. I did that one time, and I thought, oh, I'll just, you know, put the 2 here, it'll be fine. And it was gummy and gooey for 2 weeks until I threw it out. So, you know, the measurement is, I think, the most critical of it. And like I said, and the reason I like this particular brand is I only have to stir it for 3 minutes. So, like I said, and I'm not patient, so.
Thank you.
Yes.
Once you make your pour, and it's hardened up, it has some slight imperfections, can you sand that down and repolish it so it has the same gloss? Or can you put a clear finish on it, lacquer or something?
I have not used a finish on any of mine yet, it just other than 3M car polish. After you do that, I think you can put some sort of finish over the top. I just haven't.
Now, one of mine looked like a little uneven, so I just happened to have turtle wax out in my garage, and I thought, try that. So I put it on, you know, when it hazed up, I buffed it off, and it came out, you know, pretty good. So that's all.
They're pretty easy to fix, mistakes. You can either drill it out a little bit or pick at it or what, and then pour. I've never really had to fix anything yet, other than before my final pour, I've had to dig some stuff out. So I don't know what you'd have to do. I can only imagine if you had to finish epoxy without a hardener. There's hardeners you can put on top of it to make it really hard. Supposedly, I've never used it, but you can. Thank you. Well, in my world, 70 years old, and I forget half the time I'm talking about. You can, if you had a finished product and you had to refix it. I don't know how much buffing and sanding you could do to just that piece to make it look like the rest of it. I imagine once you sanded it down to 1,000 grit and you got your polish out and your buffing wheel and your lamb's wool, you could just resurface it with no problem. I think when you're going to use it, and I've never made one for cutting board, there are products that you put over the top to make it extra hard.
Yeah, I did. One of the guys at the wood shop was trying to help me because I thought I had scratches. And so he put something on it, I don't know what, and it left just this huge haze. I'm like, thanks. So anyway, I took it home, and again, I took alcohol and just, actually I did a wood shop, and just rubbed it out with the alcohol. All of that came out, and it was back to, you know, to looking really good. And so then I put my turtle wax on top, so.
What's the alcohol she used?
It's so many things.
Jim Dean.
93% or 92%
Yeah,
isopropyl,
Yeah, isopropyl. That's,
known as rubbing alcohol to
Rubbing
most
alcohol.
people, or acetone.
yeah, I haven't used the acetone, but alcohol's cheap.
Have you guys found, to say, a minimum thickness?
I haven't done a minimum thickness because you're saying like a quarter.
Like a finish almost?
Yeah, what I did, I made a big board like this out of wine corks. And because the corks were just going to go everywhere, I put a little thin layer, maybe a 1/4 inch of epoxy, and let it kind of set up a little bit, then put all my corks in, and then I just poured, the next day I just poured the whole surface. And that worked out fine. That turned out pretty good.
I've poured flood coats, and I'm not know what the specifics of it is, how high it'll stay on itself without flattening. But I'll do a pour coat over it, and they're fine. I can't imagine they're more than a 32nd, maybe a 64th thick, because it's so the viscosity of it is very low, so I mean, it'll go into a thousandths hole crack. I mean, you gotta, when you're pouring it, you gotta make sure all your voids are filled and your seams are filled, because it'll seep out in no time.
That's ugly.
Would that be a bar top finish? I mean, there are epoxies, right? You know, you go up
Yeah.
there and it's kind of a plastic coating on top of a bar.
You'd have to have that really good hardener to go on top of that.
Is that,
Yeah, they make special epoxies and additives to, I think, for the cutting boards. They have to, because the epoxy that I use kind of scratches pretty easy, and I can't imagine them not putting some sort of hardener in with it for when you're cutting and chopping.
Question?
Yeah, are any of the epoxies, are they formulated or are there additives that you can put in epoxy to cut down the gloss? So say if you wanted something with a satin finish, is there something that you can put in the epoxies to mimic that satin finish?
I think they make them, you can get it satin or glossy,
Okay.
your epoxies. I've tried they have a couple different kinds. They have by weight, by volume, 2-to-1 mix, 3-to-1. I've just stayed with the 1-to-1 ratio mix by volume. That way there's no problems, you know, it's pretty easy. I don't know if the 3-part give it a little more harder, 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. It probably does. It probably has its own applications, but I just stick with the 1-to-1. I used a 2-to-1 once before, and at the end, my hardener's all gone, and my epoxy, I got 3 inches in the bottomless. So it's like, okay, well, let's go back to the 1-to-1.
I like the 1-to-1 also. It just makes it much easier.
Well, I use the 1-to-1 also, the 2 and 3-to-1. You can do tabletops and large pieces, that's where you use that. You have longer curing time, or you call pot time on there.
I don't want leftovers.
I saw them pour, the maximum I've ever seen anyone pour is 4 inches. And then that took, I was telling them about the temperature controlled room. They brought the temperature down, gave it more curing time, and I think he let it cure for 10 days before he could work on it. I always let anything, because you had to use more of it.
I used the powder in this blue one, and then my children gave me a box of 36 colors, so I could make many more colors. So they keep finding things for me to do.
What do you mix with the powder? What do you mix with?
Just the epoxy itself. So I stir the epoxy, put the powder in, stir it some more, and there it goes. So it's really very easy, you know. And I wanted swirls in this one, so I just simply with, you know, I don't know, going to something, a chopstick, or yeah. It made a design.
Which is harder, plastic resin or epoxy?
I don't know anything about the plastic resin, just
I'm talking about epoxy or resin, plastic resin.
Depends on the formulation.
Alan, I was a little confused by something you said.
Okay.
I'm assuming that you put the packing tape or silicone as a bond breaker. But you mentioned that sometimes on the bottom of your forms, you paint an epoxy.
I did.
But then
yes.
if you put epoxy in, does that not bond to that epoxy?
Yeah, which is fine. You know, I don't have any problem with that.
Well, how do you release your form?
What I do is I just take it to the table saw, cut around the whole form, and then the bottom, if I put, what's that stuff called? Luan, something like a Luan on the bottom. I just run it through the sander, and it takes the whole bottom off, and then clear all the way through. So
it does bond.
it does, but yeah, but I get rid of that. Yes.
Yeah, I heard cutting boards mentioned a couple of times. I thought epoxy was in no way, shape, or form food safe.
I would not use it.
No.
Serving board, yes. Cutting board,
Yeah, you
absolutely
want
not.
to-
No, I would never do that,
Yeah,
so.
so probably no on the cutting board.
I mean,
No, but you see, they have all those, they have a lot of epoxy forms for that, those silicone forms, and I've always heard you can't use it. But there's enough of them out on the market that maybe they have a harder epoxy. Yeah, right, I mean, so,
even if it's food safe, I don't think it would be good for your knife.
Yeah,
probably not.
You're using them for serving, not for cutting. Yeah, mostly serving.
When I do cutting boards, then I use all the safe woods, that you can use with food, so.
So the vacuum containers that I'm seeing here, that's basically a tool used to mix and get rid of bubbles. No, we're gonna talk about that
Just to
right
get rid of
now.
bubbles.
Okay.
Any more questions? Yes.
Do you ever use melamine for the base? Or is that not advisable at all?
Like I said, at the wood shop, they have so much throwaway wood, so they have like a luan, they have all these things, like a thin plywood, whatever, that's what I use.
Melamine, is that like plastic cardboard type thing? I've used that, I used that once before because I didn't have any thin wood, and I thought, yeah, I can use this, I can do it. Well, I stapled it up, and it just didn't adhere all the way around to the wood frame that I had, and it turned out to be a nightmare. You use luan at least, 8th luan, 16th luan.
And the luan's really good because it is so thin, and like I said, and it just sands right off, so.
Can you tell us for the senior?
On the page here, and Steve is going to give us a whole.
Good job.
Okay, I'm going to spend a couple minutes on using pressure pots, vacuum pots, and I call them chambers, and how they're used or not. And then I'm going to accelerate this portion so I can give as much time as possible to Steve, who has a wonderful presentation on inlays. And one of the things about his inlays, you'll see just a couple samples. They're different than my inlay. This is a love sign in Japan, in Japanese, and it goes all the way through. I can tell you about that construction later. We talked about the dyes and tints. This is very, very popular. This one has, I think, about 24 different dyes in it. You take any one of these containers and took one out. Okay. It's only this size, but here's the size of your spoon. And you take one of these and put it into a quart, and it'll turn the whole quart into the color that you like. If you want it darker, take another bout. So it uses very little in the way of the powder. My experience is I much prefer the powder. In working with Brian to get down here, he gave me, and I have stuff of my own, this is the Alumilite rather, this is the liquid. And he gave me one last night, which he didn't tell me, but it was cracked in it. So as I pulled it out of the pressure pot, I got all of my clothes and the doorknobs and everything else, and my wife was just so happy. And I spent the whole night, I felt like I was bathing in acetone and ibuprofen trying to get it all off. And that's a mess. It didn't have that type of problem when you deal with the powders. And they also come in a paste, but I don't know anybody that likes to use the paste. So let's get on to the fun part. Another aspect of the fun part. The pressure pot and vacuum chambers. And got some slides that'll give you examples of what happens with them and how they're used. And then I've got some molds, and inside the molds we'll pass it around because one of these molds went in the pressure pot and the other one was cured in the air. And so just pass these around. If you look at them, the one that was cured naturally, it's got about 100,000 air bubbles in them. Now, when you're working with these epoxies, I like to use a heat gun on there, and then I can get them up to the surface. The other one has a clear finish to it, and this is what came through the pressure pot.
Under pressure or in a vacuum?
No, pressure, and I will show you some wonderful, here, okay? And then pass it around for everybody, okay? Okay, pressure pots and vacuums are perceived to both eliminate air bubbles, pull them out. These two pieces of apparatus, they come in from 2.5 gallons up to 10 for the pressure pot, and I have seen them from 1.5 gallons to 5 plus. I haven't seen 10 or 20 gallon ones for the vacuum, but the principles are really quite different. The size of what you can put into any one of these pots is based on the interior. This is a 5 gallon unit. But what you can do is if you have a lot of little items you want to have, like doing those coaster molds, you can have that sit on the bottom, and then you use magnets around an upper level, and then you can put another layer on top. So it just has to fit inside the pot. Generally, epoxy does not cure faster in a pot than if you have it cure naturally outside. I've seen some videos like from the UK where they say, yeah, it does accelerate it, but they couldn't give me a time whether it gets done in 80% of the time or 90% of the time. But generally, if you're going to use a pressure pot, put it in and let it go overnight. That'd be, say, 12 hours or so from that. As you heard Bob and Ellen say, you know, we like to let things go on 24 hours just to be safe.
What pressure is it, Bert? What pressure?
Good question. The pressure pots, okay, the pressure pots work between best at about 40 to 60 pounds of pressure going in there. The manufacturers recommend you go at no more than 60, and it has a safety valve, so here's your safety valve that you cannot go over 80. Now Brian, he didn't read the manual. He likes to push it up to 90. He says, hasn't blown up on me yet. So, you know. But, so what happens? A pressure pot, it puts the pressure down on the epoxy. It doesn't remove the bubbles. It shrinks them down to a microscopic level. So you let that be at pressure, say 60 pounds. You let it sit for at least overnight, maybe 24 hours if you can. Just keeps the pressure on there. It's now cured. And the epoxy is so strong that once it gets out of the pressure pot and comes to the natural environment, the air bubbles do not have enough strength to be able to expand. So I gave you those to pass around, didn't I? Yeah. Okay. So on the one that's clear, that's been through the pressure pot, and it looks like they're all clear, and yet it was the exact same mixture that's in the one with all the bubbles. One just wasn't using the pot, one was using just air, and we didn't apply any heat guns to it. I wanted to show you the impact of it. So the pressure pot does not remove air, it just reduces it to a microscopic level. These are primarily used for casting. The vacuum chamber, you got the, give me the next slide showing that. That's the beginning. Okay, all right. We're missing one I wanted to show. Well, we can do that. We can do that. Anyway, if you're going to use a vacuum chamber, you need to have a vacuum pump. Oh, by the way, you use your standard compressor. You only got to go up to 40 or 60 pounds, so you can have a small 1 gallon compressor. You don't need to have a mammoth 30 gallon or more. This, you have to have the vacuum pump with it, and you'll go up to the full amount of 30%, or I don't know what the 30 stands for, 3 measures in there to get the maximum pressure. But what happens in there? The vacuum pump, is used for stabilizing wood and in castings. But the problem with it, and we have a slide on the next one, this is what happens inside the tank, and it's only in there for 10 minutes at a time. All the air just foams right up into this vacuum. And eventually, what's left of it will go back down into the container. But it also leaves a lot around the container, so it's a real pain in the duff. So why would you do that? You have to often do that about 5 or 6 times before you get all the air out. And then once you have the air out, what do? Then you take it out and you put it into your mold or into a cast. Here, with the pressure pot, you fill up your mold and then you cast it and let the pressure shrink those bubbles. So if you're going to get stabilized wood, anybody know what stabilized wood is? Or if you get soft wood, soft fibered wood, or spalted wood, yes, forgot the word for a moment, yeah, right. And you want to turn those into pens or other things. It can fracture, end grain fracture on you, it gets very soft. Well, when you use the chamber here, you have a special, very thin epoxy that goes in there, and it'll penetrate through all that wood, and also becomes like fossilized. But it's very good for turning after that. So you see people have turning in vases and such. That's how that's done. Now,
But that's only, it doesn't work in the pressure pot, only in the vacuum to stabilize wood?
That's correct. Yes.
And they call it cactus juice.
Yeah, I didn't bring any of the epoxy for that, but it's you just put your wood in vertically, fill it up, and then we'll saturate that wood. Here. Now, this is an attempt. Can you give me the next slide? Give me the next slide. Okay.
How thick a wood can you put in there and it'd be stabilized?
I don't know how thick it is. What I've seen people using is, like you use for pens, would be 3/4 of an inch to an inch square, and maybe 6 or 8 inches long. I've seen it with 1.5 to 2 inches. I don't know how thick you can go on that, but that's one of its primary attributes on there.
Seems like I've seen mallets made out of it.
Well, I was going to say bowl. I have spalted birch that's like 3 inches in diameter. I didn't know if you could put something like that in there and then turn it on a lathe.
Yeah.
I would imagine you can.
If it's in the pot, it'll go all the way to the center.
Yes.
If there's any porosity in the wood, it's going to suck it in. Okay.
But that's what you use to vacuum. Now, some people try to put a mold in the vacuum pump. A vacuum chamber, and they had, in this case, they had many facets on it. Okay, so this was done in a pressure pot. This was done in the vacuum chamber. Doesn't look too much like it's got any facets on it. It looks like a blob. But anyway, that's the two. So if you want to, what people will do, they'll put in a vacuum. They'll go through these cycles of trying to get all the air out of it. And then from there, they'll pour it into a mold and let it be just in the pot or just out in the natural air. But what happens when they pour? They're pouring more air back into the mix. So why'd you go through all this process of trying to bubble it out? And then give you 2 hours of cleaning on the thing. So anyway, that's the basic differences on there. And you can make, or, oh, there's another use for it. You can make molds, or you can buy them. They're not made of epoxy, they're made of silicone. And so you can make or buy. and silicone works well in here. So that's the basics between the two. I just want to take a couple minutes to try to explain to you how it works. You set up the pressure in here or here, and you can leave the pressure on. Air's not going to escape, and you just leave it for whatever time you want. You have a gauge over here where you can see what your pressure is and what your vacuum is, and if by chance the vacuum is decreasing or the pressure is decreasing, just put a little more air on there. So that's basically what they are. This cleans up better, but the other doesn't. So.
Do you have approximate cost for both either of those?
Yeah, these are about, well, the cost has been coming down. This one Brian had gotten a few years ago. He spent $800 for that. What I've been seeing recently are, for this size, 5 gallon, they're running about $350, $400 for a good brand. Okay, these are less expensive because you're not dealing with a lot of pressure. All you have is just a metal can and a transparent top. And as long as you got a good gasket in there so the air doesn't escape. They're running at about 150 to 200.
But the pump then, how much is that? For the
I don't know.
orange?
But yeah, you're going to have to commit to both of them. So,
Okay.
They're talking about Bob was talking about what tape. This is a silicone tape that you line your unit with if you're going to make your own patch. This little bit of tape is $25. So, now these aren't such a bad deal, right? So I want to just give you a little bit about that. I don't claim to be a pro in it, but I thought you should be aware. And then
I was interested, I saw an article on fine woodworking, and they were showing using epoxy as an inlay. And I was really interested in that. So I went and got I bought the epoxy that the guy that wrote the article. The guy that wrote the article actually was a chemist for an epoxy company, and he decided he didn't want to do that anymore, so he went off and started a business using epoxy for doing things. And so epoxy I'm using is called laminating epoxy for this. There's also casting epoxy, which is different. And it's a two-part. So essentially, this was a picture that was in fine woodworking about what this person did, and they were doing cutting boards, and he poured it in there. And anyway, so go to the next slide. And so I started with 4 forms, passing the 3 of them around. This one here, bottom left, was a disaster. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I used some honey locust wood, which, when doing this, it is important to choose your kind of wood, because this was not the right wood to use.
Do they recommend it?
Huh?
Do they recommend that?
Yeah, they wanted to use a closed grain. This was an open grained wood, and it wasn't kind of the best. Now, okay, preface this. This is my absolute first ever attempt at this kind of inlay. I've used many epoxies in the past. I used epoxy for vacuum veneering, and I use West Systems for adhesive, but I've never used this before. So, anyways, go on to the next one. So I use this called CLR entropy resin, and the reason I chose it was that's the epoxy the guy in the article used. Which I found out that this epoxy, if you Google it or you look on YouTube, it's a dominant player in the surfboard making industry. So it's laminating, but it's very hard, and it's watertight, and it's used in high-end surfboards. Okay, next one. Epoxy is a liquid, so I put caulking around it. One of my lessons learned was you got to use the right caulking because the caulking puddled up I think it's been mentioned earlier that it'll leak underneath if you don't use good caulking or you use the wrong caulking, and yeah, it kind of created a mess. But you got to put a dam, if you would, or a border around them. Okay, next one.
So what type of caulk did you finally wound up with?
I forget what I used. Go back one.
Said GE type 1.
You're supposed to be using this GE type 1. I went to Lowe's and just got it caulking, and didn't work.
Okay.
I used hot glue before, I'm smaller, make little dams, hot glue seems to work good for me.
What's that?
I used hot glue before for like making a little
Okay.
dam around things, but never that big, you know, maybe 4 inches across seemed to do real well. I've never tried the putty, but that was legit too.
I was going by what they showed in the article. A lot of lessons learned. This epoxy common curing is 7 days. The lamp is what the company wants to tell you at room temperature. I'd learned from vacuum veneering and some other things with wet systems that if you apply heat to epoxy, it really increases the curing time. Every 10 degrees, there's a certain amount. I have a small laboratory furnace I got from a university that was remodeling. So I got it up to 120 degrees F for like 70 minutes, and it was fully cured. So rather than 7 days, it got done in a little over an hour. So, and that's the same with vacuum veneering. People will put in a vacuum bag, and as soon as it's gone for any bit, you put a heating blanket on it, and it'll cure the epoxy quickly.
In lieu of the technical oven that you had, furnace that you had to heat the mold and the epoxy, can we use the wife's oven?
Use the what?
The wife's oven?
Now, if you use, I think I put it on here, if you use a gas oven, a microwave, or some other heating type elements, it'll affect the resin.
Oh, so it has to be electric?
Well, I don't even know what, no, yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I just know that I bought this oven because I wanted to anneal 3D printed parts. So, you know, it just happened to be there and I used it, you know. And I didn't want to wait the 7 days.
Great idea, thank you.
Going back, this is actually a two-part, this is a part A, part B. It's two-part epoxy, but it's a 2-to-1 ratio between the hardener and the resin.
I noticed you had you said a slow cure hardener. Is there a fast cure hardener on your slide?
Yeah, yes. I used a slow because I didn't know how fast I was. You know, I wanted to have time, but it only gives 43 minutes of work time for the slow. The fast was like 12 minutes, and I didn't figure I was that fast. So, at least at this point, you know. Next slide. So anyway, the epoxy, one of the things I learned quickly, well, not quickly, well, obviously, I had over poured, and the caulking didn't work so well. I made a mess. So the first thing was how do you get, before I put it in the oven, I wanted to get the caulking off, because I didn't know what the heck the caulk was going to do once I got it to high temperatures. So I ended up having to use a chisel and a hammer to break off the excess, which was a nasty, so a lot of lessons learned. Next man.
Hit the wrong button.
So, the author says sand it. Epoxy is not as hard as you might think. Start with 80 grit, da-da-da. That's bull. You know, I don't know how much sandpaper you would need because the paper just gets. Now I over poured too much, but anyways. So I used a router bit and cleaned it down to the level. you know, so, kind of like people that do cutting boards, when you have to do the glue up and you clean them up, that's basically the same thing. Okay, next slide. Top one, I think, goes along with kind of what was said earlier. The article author, this guy is a chemist. I have seen some dramatic failures with resin inlay, both my own and those of friends, improper setup times, incomplete hardening, da 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 da. Yeah, I found a bunch of those. Yeah, there's a bit of things going on. Those of you that have seen those things passed around, the translucent shows everything below it. Now I put a liquid, Mix-Alt is a really fine, it's not a paste, it's a liquid. It's you know, you put drops in. And, you know, and the other thing, so as I was pouring, I knew I had too much, so I took a piece of plywood that I had laying around and used it as the off pour. And this was the translucent. It's pretty cool. Pass it around, I guess, a little bit. Kind of shows this might be of some value in the future as to what to probably do with it. It adds color to a wood, and you still see all the grain.
Where do you buy your epoxies from?
I bought it directly from the manufacturer. Of course, they're in, what did I say? Saginaw. So they shipped it. And I think it was relatively inexpensive. I think the hardener and the epoxy were like $50. You know, so it wasn't pricey.
I think I mentioned at the last meeting that I was shocked. I went to Public Lumber, they just moved, they got a new place, they're no longer at 7 Mile, Woodward, what have you. They're in Madison Heights now, 13 Mile and Stevenson. And I went back there and said, every kind of epoxy, West System, aisles and aisles of that stuff. So you don't have to, it's all under one roof, you don't have to go shopping for it.
Yeah.
It's Public Lumber.
So, again, it's paragraph here, going to try and make this available afterwards, but big pores like those in red oak can cause problems. My choice of honey locust was only due to it being an off-cut piece in the shop, so not the best criteria for choosing the material. I did one that had a 1/2-inch pour. Now this epoxy, laminating epoxy that I used, it's only really good for a 1/4 inch or less. I went to a 1/2 inch on another pour. This morning it's still gummy and sticky, and you know, it's never gonna cure. So again, in that brand, I should have used the casting epoxy. You know, I guess I got to say that I think every epoxy supplier probably has got a little or special sauce, whatever you want to call it, and probably a learning curve for every one of them. But that was it. Well, that's the next slide. So, frequently asked questions in the future, am I going to try again? Yes. What am I going to do differently? I'll get some syringes, because what I'm doing is inlay rather than putting it over a surface. So they do have syringes, and I'm going to trial them instead of pouring. I found my technique of pouring wasn't that good, you know, and that's what he used in his show, and he showed he used it, but yeah, not a talent. So, and for smaller areas, I think that syringes level the workbench, because one of the things I didn't really realize, my shop is in my garage, and if you build a garage by code, it has to have a certain degrees of angle so that the water will run out, right? Well, it also means that the epoxy is going to run out. So that was part of my overpour problem. I was putting it in, you know, I don't know. So I'm going to try casting resins if I do deeper pours, because one of the things I wanted to do with these casting, and they showed in the article, was what Bert showed, where you can have, you know, you can do it all the way through. So if you made a box, it's going to, you know, see the light coming through it. You know, that was one of the things I wanted to try with the deeper pour, but that particular brand of epoxy didn't work right. Didn't do well. I got to get the right caulk next time. And I'm going to try to find some more information on coloring products that are used with this brand. And one of the things that's interesting is they told me on the brand, I called their technical support, and I used I mixed 2 batches. And I mixed dark blue and grass green. And there's no darn difference. You know, they both came out, and then I started reading up more and said, well, don't use the red mix salt, because that'll just come out black, because the colors reacted with the resin or the hardener, which are both. So I either got to find a different kind of coloring product or what. So anyway, next thing. The other thing I found as I was doing my research, after I had already bought it, looking at research, I found this Entropy, their claim to fame on YouTube or Google is surfboards. Everybody that does surfboards on the West Coast uses Entropy epoxy. It's well respected for the, you know, keeping, because they build the surfboards out of solid wood, and then they fiberglass and use the Entropy epoxy to wet it out. So it makes the water, so they last forever, you know, and they do well with being banged and beat and everything else. But I don't know, it just seems like that's going to be something interesting I'm going to try in the future, is wetting out, put some tint in the epoxy, put it on some nicer wood, and see how that works out. So anyways, we're at the pastime, so.
Pardon my bad memory, but do your slides contain a reference to the article that you keep referring to?
Yeah.
It's on that first slide.
If it isn't, I can add, that can be added very easily.
It was there, I saw it, but I forgot it. Yes, you had it on the,
Did I have it on the first slide?
no. There it is.
Go to the next one.
2026.
I saw January 2026, I didn't see what the publication was.
That's the date I saw.
Yeah, it's March 2018.
Oh, okay.
Now, talking about the shelf life of epoxy, I went and looked the other day, you know, and I found the packing list, and I had bought my epoxy in March of 2020. And I used it, and guess what, it worked, you know. So, for Entropy, what they talk about stirring and mixing is that once you add the hardener to the resin, you're supposed to keep stirring until you never see another swirl. You know, when you first put it together, you see swirls. Once you don't see a swirl, then you're good. They do, now when I did the coloring, I added the coloring to the hardener only. Mixed that all up till it was mixed. Then I added it into the resin and then stirred that till I got no swirls. One of the other things they want you to do then is to pour the epoxy that you've mixed there into another container. Because when you're trying to stir in a in any kind of a tub or anything, it's going to be really hard to get into corners. So you're supposed to get, if you're going to use a tub that's got a corner in the bottom, you should use a stirrer that's got a sharp corner so you can get in there. Because otherwise your mixture isn't going to be perfect. And that's why they want you to pour it into another one before you pour into what you're doing, because you can then end up with a completely mixed pour. Otherwise you could, when you get to the final end of your pour from the cup that I was using, you can end up with a bad mixture.
Don't use cups with corners, use round cups.
Well, that's, yeah. Well, you know, like if you're gonna use a spoon, it's not gonna work, right? You need something with a corner, something like a end of a yardstick kind of a thing, or a spatula, you know, with sharp corners. Anyways, I don't, you know.
Very good, very informative.
Got some good news. Dan got photos of all of these slides. So within a couple weeks, he'll have them all posted on the website. It'll be on the, for the month's presentation. Yes?
Do you have time for a quick tip about using epoxy with inlays? I've done it a few times where I'm using an inlay to decorate a piece. And particularly on walnut, if my inlays were about a ½ inch deep, and I was putting some crushed glass in there and I wanted to see it, well, the color of the bottom of the walnut just made that light just absorb it. You couldn't see it. So when I routed my inlay, I took some aluminum foil tape, taped the bottom of that inlay. So essentially you're creating a mirror. Put your fill in there, put your casting. So now once it's cured, that light just bounces off and it just really lets that epoxy pop in there. It doesn't absorb the light, it reflects it. Just really simple.
The outline of the tape or anything, it just provides like a light to it?
What's that? I'm sorry?
You don't see the edges of the...
No, because what I do is I'll try and cut the approximate shape and I'll get it down there. I'll take a piece of wood, I'll burnish it, and I'll take an X-Acto knife and make sure it's just following the bottom outline.
Great idea.
Okay, the meeting is concluded.